Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Boss Body Podcast. This is Sarah Haas, and I'm honored that you've chosen to be here with me today. I want to dive in to a subject that this sort of really opened my mind to a lot, and it's drinking and alcohol. And, it's something that I know a lot of you ladies, I enjoy my glass of wine. I know you do too. But sometimes that can get a little much, a little out of our control, and it can kind of become a lot like food in a way because it's a way of escape, it's a way of numbing out. And especially like through the COVID years, it became just such a crutch that we relied on. And we were home and we were depressed and worried and anxious and scared. And it became something that a lot of us turned to. And we know alcohol's not good for our bodies. We know it's not good for our health. It increases your chance of all kinds of cancers, something I'm obviously very aware of because of my history with breast cancer and wanting to prevent that ever coming back, obviously, and any other cancers. And it's also related to other lifestyle related diseases. So it's a toxin. It's not good for our body. We know that, but yet it kind of can pull us in. And so I wanted to have Colleen Freeland on today. She's an intuitive drinking coach and the founder of the Emotional Sobriety Coaching. And I feel like she has such a different perspective than what we're used to hearing. So I can't wait for you to hear what she has to say about that. I want to just tell you a little bit about her. She's also the host of the globally top ranked It's Not About the Alcohol podcast, which I know she's going to dive in and kind of explain what she means by it's not about the alcohol. And she coaches high achieving professional women who want to reduce their alcohol consumption, and she does that through a combination of holistic and evidence-based strategies in neurophysiology, cognitive reframing, and spirituality. So it's very holistic, which you know I love, to reprogram your mind and body so you actually prefer drinking in moderation, which I love that. Colleen will tell us some of her story. She struggled with alcohol use disorder for over 20 years in secret before she discovered that the solution to overdrinking is to actually get happy, not sober. So that's a real mindset shift. She's an addiction and recovery certified master life coach with an MSc in health coaching, a BS in biology and chemistry education, and she's certified as a women's functional and integrative professional. So, Colleen, I can't wait to hear what you have to share with us. And I want to thank you so much for being here today.
I'm excited too. I love talking about this, giving women a different perspective, also giving them hope and real information that can move the needle on sometimes what becomes a habit that feels very shameful and guilt and fear inducing, like you talked about, what am I doing to my health? So I'm excited to dive into this with you today.
Yeah, and I think so many of us can relate, regardless of our level of drinking. We know it's not good. And if you say, oh, I'm not going to have a glass of wine with dinner every single night, and then you end up doing it two, three, 4 nights in a row, and then you wake up the next day and you're like, ugh, I really shouldn't have had that drink last night. But then there's a whole spectrum of this disordered way of drinking and of dealing with your life. And I know some women have really struggled with getting control over this. So I'm excited to hear what you mean. One of the things that you mentioned to me is gray area drinking and mindful drinking. But before you dive into what that means and how it can change us, I want to hear a little bit about your story because I know that you have a really personal story, which so many of us do. That's how we come to be in the work that we're doing, is because we
Yeah.
have had personal experience.
You listed all of my accolades, but you forgot to mention I have a PhD in drinking and alcohol use disorder, which, just to be clear on that, alcohol use disorder is a thinking issue where you drink more than you think you should drink. And for some reason, that feels hard or complicated to self-correct. Alcohol use disorder is not measured by how much or how often you drink. And I was a daily drinker, a heavy daily drinker. I mean, I drank a bottle of wine every single night without skipping a day for 15 years, even when I was sick or traveling or whatever. Like it was such a habit. And I had become ashamed of that. You talked about waking up the next morning and being like, I shouldn't have done that. Why did I do that? That is actually the seed of alcohol use disorder. It is your response to yourself when you perceive that you failed or that you've made a mistake or that you can't stick with it, you're inconsistent. Like it's not about how much or how often you drink. It's about your response to yourself that fuels the negative emotions. Your relationship with alcohol gets infected, if you will, by shame and guilt and fear and all the other negative emotions. And then that's where it becomes, an emotional issue. And then in your brain, alcohol's a problem, but it's also a solution. And welcome to Crazy Town. And I went through that for, like I said, I drank every day for 15 years. And for a long time, I didn't perceive that to be a problem. I perceived it to be a privilege. Grandma says, eat on your best plates. And I assumed that would be coupled with, top shelf vodka in a cocktail or a vintage bottle of Cabernet. I didn't perceive that I was doing anything wrong or even anything unhealthy. I mean, I grew up in a time where one or two glasses of red wine was considered healthier than being a teetotaler.
Yeah,
So
and I think that's been promoted in the
yeah,
media that drinking is healthy because of XYZ, when really if you do your research, the negative impact physically
yeah,
outweighs the positive.
yeah. Yeah, it does, and I'm going to push back on that just a little bit because there are blue zones where smokers and drinkers live past 100. It is not, there's hundreds of studies on, let's say, smokers, and who dies of lung cancer and who doesn't is not determined by how much or how long you smoked. It's determined by your ability to process emotions, which is why
Really?
alcohol, yeah. I mean, of course, you can smoke your risk up quite well and you can drink your risk up, but it is not the external carcinogens that are the problem. You could just as easily get focused on things like plastic water bottles and pesticides in your food and preservatives and sugar and MSGs. There are so many things that we can be afraid of. And it's honestly, it's the reason I teach intuitive drinking is because your body is very intelligent.
Hmm.
You don't have a high tolerance for alcohol. You have a high tolerance for ignoring yourself. Your body 0 times craves alcohol. It craves water and sleep and sunlight and movement and connection. Pretty simple. It's like babysitting a 2-year-old. It's the stories we get into our head about why we want to drink or why we need to drink or why it's, again, hard or complicated to drink less. And so, like a lot of the work that I do, it's just relanguaging. I'm really craving alcohol. No, you're not. You're craving stress relief. You're
Hmm.
craving more support. You're
Hmm.
craving being seen and understood. So everything we do, every action we take, honestly, it filters down to an emotional need. And when you learn to communicate what you really need and you learn how to read your own body language, your body speaks energy, not English. And so the dangers of alcohol are really mitigated when you start paying attention. There are times when I take one sip of wine and I'm like, it's not today. And there are times when I love, please get me a second glass. I'm having fun. I feel great. Our needs are always changing. And what happens with women like me, probably a lot of your audience as well, is we're perfectionists. We like rules. And so for me, I got attached to the rule that celebration, end of day, stress relief, reward equals wine. And I stopped paying attention to how it felt in my body.
Hmm.
And that's really the thinking disorder. When I work with women, we don't try to change your behavior. That'll be a natural side effect of you tuning the hell into your body. We change the thoughts and the beliefs that are driving the behavior.
I love that because that is really along the lines of what I teach
Yeah.
with emotional eating. It is not about the food. Your body doesn't want more food than it needs. Your body doesn't want too much sugar, too much processed foods. Adding food between, snacking and late night snacking when you don't actually need it, it comes from a different place. Some of that is physical. Things get out of balance and you have a need for energy and lots of reasons. But emotional is at the core of it. And what is it you're really hungry for? What is
Right.
it you're really craving? And if you just focus on the food, with what you're saying is if you just focus on the alcohol, then you're thinking, oh, don't do it. Then you do it because you didn't get to the root of why you're doing it. And then that guilt and shame comes in, which makes you feel worse, which perpetuates that cycle of going back again and again for
Yeah.
relief of not feeling good. And then it's just this snowball that's just never ending cycle that just keeps repeating itself. So I really do understand where you're coming from.
The worst thing you can do is decide to reduce your drinking or to not drink. And I want to explain the difference between a negative and a positive goal. It's not that saying you want to drink less or lose weight is negative. But in terms of how the brain works a lot like a search engine. So if you want something, you have to tell it what you want, not what you don't want. It's
Yeah.
very similar if you were to go to dinner in a foreign country, you don't speak the language, and there's two things on the menu, and there's a picture of steak and there's a picture of pasta, but you're gluten free. So you start pointing at the pasta and being like, I don't want this because I can't have it because I have celiac disease. What is the waiter going to bring you? It's what you're pointing at. And so, learning how to set positive emotional goals, what do you really want? And your brain will help you get it. Your brain is beautifully designed. When you focus on what you don't want, your brain helps you get more of that. So it's kind of like an error code. It's a logic, which is why when you think about reducing your drinking, your body's like, "Oh, I don't like that." It's because you're thinking unintelligently. When your mind and body are aligned, there's a lift in your heart. Your creative juices start flowing. And so anytime you're setting a goal that feels bad in your body, it's not the goal per se that's wrong, it's the way you're thinking about it.
That makes sense. That really does make sense. So, what's the gray area? How do you know what that gray area is and what does that look like and what is it like for you?
Gray area drinking is when you're trying to control your drinking. Like people are always like, well, how do I know if I have alcohol use disorder? Well, if you ask the question, welcome to the club. Like, do I have a drinking problem? Again, how does the brain work? Let's just talk about language. Turn that into a statement. Like all these questions are masquerading as passive aggressive. We've all been with somebody who's asking us questions and we know exactly what they mean. Well, our brain works the same way. Do I have a drinking problem? Is code for I have a drinking problem. And so gray area drinking is just when you know that your life would be better if you drank less. And you don't qualify as an alcoholic, you're highly functional. I mean, I used to drink a bottle of wine every single night. I still taught hot power yoga in the morning. I had four of my own kids and three step kids all of them were teenagers. For 10 years, I was running 1,000 miles an hour. And I thought, I was just rewarding myself at night, but I knew I didn't need words to know this didn't feel good. I could feel better. So that's what gray area drinking is. It just means it's where people get stuck because they're asking themselves the wrong problem. Do I have a drinking problem? And then your brain's like, well, let me print out a PhD dissertation of who's worse and how justify that I don't have a drinking problem. Let me Google what is an alcoholic, take the test there, and I only got 4 out of 10. Therefore, like blah, blah, blah. It doesn't matter. Your body's saying, I could feel better. Do you want to
Yeah.
feel better?
Yeah. So you're justifying it with facts about it rather than your own intuition. Because for me, I know that no amount of alcohol, it's better for me not to have any alcohol. I feel better. I feel better the next day. No matter how much water I drink, I still feel a little bit dehydrated. And I'm talking one glass of wine, maybe two. My thinking is slower, more clouded. I feel more tired. I feel more sluggish. My workout isn't as good, but I'm someone who's very in tune with my body. And a lot of people may not be. And so they're drinking and not even realizing it. So what you're saying is really tune in to what your body
Yeah.
is saying.
Because there's times, the other thing is your needs always change. So someone may listen to what you just said and be like, not me. I feel better when I drink.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that also is a belief that is based on past experiences that may cause you to tune out of present experiences. As women, we go through menopause, we have sleep issues, there's stressful times in our life. Your body's needs are always changing. Yesterday's truth is tomorrow's bullshit. So you can't get attached to how I am, where you're identifying with your behavior, because you have to stay curious and open. Like, I think of my relationship with myself. I used to think of it as my identity, who I am, where I went to college, my personality traits, all the things I like and don't like, what I'm good at, what I'm bad at. Yourself is a physical being that lives in the present moment, and her needs are always changing. And so you can't get too attached to what you think you know about yourself, because when you do, you miss the new information that you would feel so much better if you paid attention to.
So, do you distinguish between alcohol use disorder and being an alcoholic? Or
Mm.
is this just your way of looking at it in a different way? Do you believe some people are alcoholics and some have a
I
drinking
believe that some
disorder?
I believe that some people believe that they are alcoholics. The DSM-5, the latest version, you can say alcoholism because for sure I experienced that, but we don't label people. And that's where people get stuck is if you think you're an alcoholic, your dad was an alcoholic, then the number one predictor of addiction and over drinking with alcohol is the belief that you're one of those people who needs to drink more, wants to drink more, can't control yourself. That is a mindset, that is a belief. Your any addiction can be broken. We all get addicted to things all the time. And so, I mean, I'm a perfect example. I was drinking half a fifth of vodka a day by the time I was done. And now, one or two glasses of wine occasionally I enjoy, but I have no desire to keep going because my body doesn't like it. It makes me feel sick and icky, and just like you said with it. So alcoholic is actually a very dangerous label to slap on people. Studies show that people who identify as sober alcoholics have much higher rates of binge drinking in the future because they believe one drink is a relapse, and then it just becomes a self-confirming self-prophecy, and then they go out and they do that. And whereas people who are taught that, you can stay sober as long as you want, but you're not going to lose control. Nobody loses control when they drink. They lose control of their thinking, not their drinking. And so the way people look at themselves, you know, even the idea of losing control, I'd never lost control. If I had to drive, I could get my shit together. If I had to teach an extra class in the morning, I didn't do it. If I was getting my liver enzymes tested, I'm going to dial it down. If I want to lose 10 pounds before spring break, I would control my alcohol. The problem was when I wasn't motivated to control it, and my relationship with myself was just absent, and all these other beliefs were driving. So, to answer your question, alcoholic is a self-imposed identity. There's no test. You don't go out in nature and find this person is or isn't. Of course, there's genetics that deal with how you metabolize alcohol that might make it more appealing or whatever. But like the whole concept of the addictive personality, that's not a thing. Even addiction experts agree. That's a mindset, and mindsets can be learned and unlearned.
I'm wondering about those people listening who have had issues with alcohol in their past, who are now sober, who are going through whether it's AA or therapy or whatever, and let's say they haven't been drinking at all for 10 years, for 20 years, for 5 years, whatever. And in the past, alcohol was having a huge negative effect on their life, on their relationships, on their career, their finances, everything. And I I worry that they're going to hear what you're saying and think, "Oh, okay, there's no such thing as an alcoholic, therefore I'm not an alcoholic. She just said, that's not a thing. So that means I can go have a drink." When we know that people who used to have a real problem with alcohol, and I get what you're saying, it's a mindset, but every time they've tried just going back and having one drink now and again, it immediately spirals out into a binge and then another binge, and then they're back at rock bottom where they started. What would you say to those people? Because I don't want this to feel like, hey,
Yeah.
you now have permission. You're
No.
not an alcoholic. Go ahead, have that drink. You
Yeah.
know, what do you say to
What I
that?
would say to somebody is if you have found something, if removing alcohol from your life has significantly improved your life, why would you want to change that? But maybe they do want to change that. Like life is long and it's not about the alcohol, but they don't like, I don't give somebody permission to drink. And also, the story that I will never drink again is a story. Like all time is now, you can change your mind at any time. So some people thrive under, you know what, let's just remove that. I can't drink, I don't drink, and there's nothing wrong with that. What I am here to talk about is that there's another way. Like this idea that lifelong abstinence is the only way to become happy and emotionally regulated and mentally healthy. There are more than one path. So if somebody has found their path to be sobriety, then there's no reason to change that. And I would caution you, don't go pouring alcohol on the belief that you're an alcoholic. As long as that feels true, you should abstain. If
Yeah.
you want to do the work, I mean, my program's a year long. Is it worth it to you to change that? Well, then, let's talk. But the truth is that 6 to 12 months after breaking an addiction, the prefrontal cortex is denser. You have your ability to self-regulate is improved. The only thing that trumps that is the belief that you can't, or that one drink is a relapse, or that you're going to go down the slippery slope. The women that I work with we do hard work. This is a complicated issue, and I don't want to misunderstand that. You do not listen to a podcast and change your mind. Your mind is changed through felt experience and support and new ideas that you test. And like this is why I call myself the hangover whisperer. The work that has to be done to resolve the emotions around alcohol is kind of done the next morning. Like that's why I'm the hangover whisperer. It's the shame, it's the guilt, it's the fear, it's the judgment that you are putting on yourself with that. That's a whole lot of work. So I would
Hmm.
not recommend anybody who feels any emotional response to the idea that they are an alcoholic shouldn't be drinking. And until, that changes with the right support or care, or over time, you just expose yourself to new information, then it's a different story.
Yeah, as you're talking, I have some experience with dealing with addiction around me, family, people I've been in relationships, that kind of thing. So I've really read a lot into the literature, especially through Alcoholics Anonymous and Al-Anon, which is the family and loved ones of people who are addicts. And what I'm thinking is really what you're teaching is very similar. It's teaching this is a deeper issue.
Yeah.
This is not just about the drinking is the symptom.
Yes.
It's not the cause. And so if you're in AA and you're going through the 12 steps and you have a sponsor and that is helping you not ruin your life through drinking, then you probably are doing the deeper work. That's
Yeah.
one way of doing the deeper work. And I think everyone who struggles with alcohol issues should have a therapist or a coach, something more than just sort of doing it on your own or doing it with a sponsor who's not actually a trained expert in that to help them resolve the underlying issues. And
Yeah.
so I like how you're coming at it because some people don't, it doesn't resonate with them when they go. They don't feel like that is going to work for them.
Right.
They don't like the wording or they don't like the structure and the format and the group or whatever it is. It's not going to work for them. And so you're bringing women in to your coaching and saying, there's a different way that you can resolve this. And it may be that at the end, you decide no amount of alcohol is good for you. It's better to not have any. Or maybe once in a while, a drink is okay. Maybe just on holidays. Or maybe a couple glasses on the weekend is okay for you. But whatever it is, you're clearing up that underlying issue that keeps driving you. And we do feel like we're craving whatever it is, the food or the alcohol. We feel like we're craving it. But like you said, we're not craving that. We are craving self love, self respect, feeling worthy. Close relationships, a fulfilling job, a fulfilling life. And it takes a lot of work. Your program's a year, but my guess is it's honestly a lifelong.
Yeah.
Everything is. We're always works in progress. When you finish one thing, there's another thing to tackle.
Well, I like what you're saying there because if you move away from the idea that you're going to get there,
Yeah.
and learn how to be here and adjust with what is. I did AA for about a year. I stayed sober for 3 years, and
Hmm.
I just moved through life. I kind of what for me what changed was I was working with women. Addiction is a spectrum. Not everybody's killing half a bottle of vodka every night like I was. And you can move in and up and down the spectrum. And so, what I noticed was a lot of my clients weren't staying completely sober, but they didn't know how to talk about it in sobriety school. And they didn't want to stay sober forever. They wanted to pause, hit the brakes, but they didn't want to identify as somebody who doesn't drink forever. They just wanted to fix, like you said, it's a symptom. They wanted to fix the problem. And so, for me, AA was a tool, but it was just one tool. It was just one approach. And life is long. And I think, if you are in AA and you found your people and you like do it as long, squeeze the juice, all of it out. And then don't be afraid. I guess that would be the one beacon of hope, I would say, if you've reached the end of where, for me, 3 years of sitting in sobriety meetings, I was like, I had been told you got to go to meetings, you got to work on your sobriety. And I
Right.
was like, I don't want to work on other stuff. Like this is boring. I don't want to keep talking about a drinking problem I don't even have because I ain't had a drink in 3 years. Like to me, it kind of I wanted to move on. And so, as long as you are heart open, mind open with whatever you're doing, you've got a tool that works. Use that tool, but don't be afraid if it starts to not work and think something's wrong with me. I can't keep doing this. Nope. You just need to find different support, or a different path. The brain likes novelty, and you always have to meet your needs where you are, not where you should be.
Yeah. And something that you said sort of triggered a memory that I had when I was going through therapy because I was dealing with a very close loved one who struggled, and how it was affecting me and all of that. And they were talking about, the word relapse or you probably don't use that verbiage, but sort of saying, I'm not going to drink, I don't want to drink, and then doing it anyway, and then it's spiraling out of control. And she said, if relapsing keeps occurring, if you feel out of control around your drinking, that means there is still unhealed trauma. That is your symptom, that is your clue that there's still more inner work to be done. And that's basically what you're saying is, you call it emotional sobriety.
Yeah.
And if you've struggled with something all your life, emotional something, you're not going to clear that up in a year. You're not going to go, oh, okay, I did a year of AA or therapy or your program, whatever, and go, oh, I'm never going to have another drink. I'm all good. I'm cured. I worked through that. Done. Let's move on. If you had something going on for years, you're not going to undo it all at once.
Yeah.
And so I want to thank you for sharing all that. I love the perspective, and I am all about what's underlying. We love to beat ourselves up. We like to label ourselves. We like to blame ourselves. We feel that shame all the time. When reality is, we've been through shit in our lives. You cannot escape life without hard things happening to you. And you're going to try to deal with it somehow. We have to survive. We all need, want, and deserve to feel good. And so if alcohol is how you're using, what you're using to feel good, if food is what you're using, then that's a symptom that you need more emotional sobriety. I like how you said the solution is to get happy, not sober. And that's all about getting to the root. So
Yeah.
I just want to thank you so much. I love this conversation. And I want to tell everybody listening that if they want to learn more, you can find Colleen online at emotionalsobrietycoaching.com. She also has an amazing podcast. I've been a guest. It's called It's Not About the Alcohol. And on social media, she's known as the Hangover Whisperer. So thank you, Colleen. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you, Sarah.
Absolutely. And thank you all for listening. I appreciate you, as always, for letting me be a little piece of your life. And I will see you soon.